Welcome to a new episode of our podcast Lead the Future. Change the conversation, an unedited, honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, futurist and your host, and join me as I chat with my friend Pedram Parasmand about authentic leadership. Pedram, or many know him as Pat, helps coaches, trainers, facilitators have more impact and create a more sustainable business for themselves. Pat, thank you for coming back to the podcast.
An absolute pleasure to be back here talking to you.
So we are with the podcast in the season where we reveal and explore for ourselves as leaders what authentic leadership transformation means, and in that the search is actually circling around that main question about who am I becoming, who do I travel with to the future, like what are my peers, my inner circle, and not at least who am I called to make a difference for. And when we were chatting through the time, um, it was that climbing your mountain metaphor that is such a rich source of exploring who we are, and
Yeah,
are we authentically transforming to that person we are called to be. So welcome to just explore what that means for
I cannot
you,
wait.
for me.
Yes, yeah. So I love the mountain analogy. One of the things that we have on our program when we help our clients is also a mountain analogy, and it's in preparing an analogy like that. Obviously, it's the best source of inspiration is to think about it from your own perspective and your own journey up your own mountain. And yeah, it's a very powerful metaphor that I can't wait to start unpacking with you for sure.
Yeah, well, I've used it also many for the years, like in strategy, helping the clients to get a clear future vision as a new summit,
Yeah,
and then see the strategies as getting to the first base camp, and then a new
yeah,
strategy for the second base camp. But on a personal note, and we borrow that a bit from our American friends who say, well, it's climb your mountain, circle around the mountain. You deal with what is on your way on the level you're at. So
yeah,
circle once more around the mountain on a higher level. Don't be disappointed if it appears again, because now you're able to deal on a higher level with it.
yeah. Totally different perspective as well, right?
Exactly. But then you get to the top of the mountain, the amazing view, and and
If it's
and
not cloudy.
well, those who have climbed mountains
Yeah,
have the experience, and I always describe it for those who have never climbed a mountain, that it's nearly a spiritual
mm,
experience, because you're so impressed by the full perspective of creation, and at the same time you feel so tiny but
yeah,
not too small.
yeah,
And but that's the view, and you look at higher summits, higher peaks out
yeah,
there, and you sense that you can look over them,
yeah.
which is, well, for me, like, if I measure them, they're higher. How is that possible? I don't know, but that's what happens when you're on top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Just starting at the bottom of the mountain, right? You mentioned base camp. Base camp is where whether you're an experienced climber or not, whether you've got your trusted companions or you're meeting your guide for the first time or whatever it is. Like, but base camp is a place where you're consolidating what you've got, your equipment, you're preparing for the climb, you're making sure that you know uh, how to use your map. What you've got, your compass, your everything is just in place so that when you start making the journey, each step can be much more intentional. Obviously, there are times when you start making journeys in life where you don't have all those things, and then you work your way through it anyway. But a really intentional climb, especially when it comes to intentional leadership and where you want to go, and how you want to take people along with you, you've got to do all that preparation so that you're ready for that journey. And of course, things will you'll have surprises up a mountain. Like the weather does not, even though the mountain doesn't change. I mean, obviously, in a geographical time period, it changes, but from a from a kind of a human time scale, it's, it looks the same. There might be a rock slide here or there, but ultimately it's the same. But the weather changes, right? And that's something that you can't prepare for too far in advance. And being prepared helps to navigate the fog, navigate the whatever surprises the weather might throw at you as well.
That's, I think, really a valuable leadership lesson. You anticipate where you're going, and if that's a mountain, that will not change, so you can prepare. The circumstances you cannot predict. They have huge influence, but you can prepare. That makes leadership, it sounds like a no-brainer, when you put those things to work, but that makes leadership not something that just happened, but something that happens out of an intention. The preparation, the anticipation.
Yeah, exactly. And also just there's something about, and I'm kind of reflecting on even just this year, the stuff that my business partner and I have been planning with our work. We've got a general direction of travel, around what the summit looks like. We've seen the summit, we're looking at it, we've plotted a path, and along the way there, we were just chatting beforehand, just things happen in life, right? And there's like things that we have to deal with that isn't part of the original plan, but you can work, you work around it. You make, you've got your contingency plans to make sure that you're still present in what's going on right now. So if there's, like, for example, let's use a mountain metaphor again, right? Yeah. You come across a big chasm, there's like a big, just deep chasm. I think, is that what they're called? The in the ice sheets, where
I think so. Yeah.
Right, and then you're like, okay, but that wasn't on the map.
We're just amateurs when it's about climbing mountains. Yeah.
But
there's
I've got the imagery.
There's
right?
a gap in front.
But you have to figure out how to cross that. It's like,
yeah,
you go around it. Do you create a structure to go over it? Yeah, there's definitely surprises. But if you didn't know that that's the direction you want to go, then you wouldn't bother crossing that chasm. You would turn back, and that's not leadership in that sense. I mean, it can be leadership to abort and know when to abort something, but yeah, there's definitely a navigation element, right? That is responsive to what's happening in the moment.
Just repeating you actually, leadership is not dealing with the circumstances. Leadership is actually navigating the circumstances because you know where you want to go.
Yeah.
I remember with one of my sons when he had around middle school, 12 to 18, this is in our place, he had some of his subjects he was not good enough, so he had to go to another track, less math, more culture and human science in it. And the school said, well, sometimes he wanted to become an architect, so he wanted to do an academic study in architecture, and the school said, well, sometimes you just have to adjust your dreams. I remember I nearly shouted through the telephone, you never adjust your dreams. What you adjust is the way you navigate.
Yeah.
So it didn't take him even a year longer, and now he's halfway his architecture study, and he actually had a huge benefit of the human science and culture aspects, because there is so much in architecture cultural relevant.
Mm.
And so he even, got an advantage by it. And for me, that's just, that's a close to home kind of thing,
Yes.
because as a dad, you think like, oh, help, like
Yeah, you
his
don't want to
dream
limit the
is
potential. You don't want to limit the goal, but you want to, yeah.
exactly.
No, there's a definitely, I mean, this is almost a different conversation altogether, but people who say things like that are probably very well intentioned. They don't want to, it comes from a place of wanting to be helpful, but they're grabbing onto the wrong thing. They're
Yeah,
saying the thing that's not
definitely.
helpful. Yeah.
Well, the future happens to you or happens for you,
Yeah.
that, or life, if you want to say that. And
Yeah.
do you deal with it? Do you manage it, and adapt, or do you navigate and adjust? you know but I truly think it's in that intentional preparation
Yeah.
that
Well,
you have guidance.
yeah. Well, actually, with that, then it's making me think about choosing your guide, right? Because if you're left on your own to work things out, absolutely 100% you do. People have, there's plenty of examples, right? And yet we know that the right guide can help you navigate those obstacles and achieve your goals, maybe quicker, or in a way that is helps you learn from some of the setbacks quicker. And yeah, it's definitely, if you think about leadership, the idea of getting a mentor or getting a guide or getting support can sometimes feel like there's a tension between that, because as a leader, sometimes you think, or at least I have in my past, I need to have the answers. I need to know what steps to take. And if there's a humility involved in saying, actually, can somebody help me, or can I bounce this idea off someone, or who's been there and done that before me that I can lean on and ask questions and get advice around.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. I tend to say, if you are a leader, and I count actually everyone into being a leader, yeah, you're responsible for your choices. So, but if you are a visionary leader, then you are lonely, because you see things with the eyes of your heart that you have no words for to
Mm.
express. Um, so just embrace that one.
Yeah.
But pioneering a vision is not an excuse for isolation.
Yeah.
So if no one has gone before the path that you are called to walk, there are still peers, coaches, guides, other pioneers that you need to be surrounded with, because
Yeah.
when you use your loneliness as an excuse for isolation, you get in some really weird character traits that are relationally damaging,
Yeah.
and you will not you will not reach your mission, you will not
No.
reach your purpose when you're out of a relational context,
Yeah.
because that makes us human.
Yeah.
So don't use it as an excuse for isolation,
Yeah.
or out of shame, or of proud, out of hurt. It actually, it doesn't matter, because it's not an excuse for isolation.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And as a tangential point to that, it made me think about another skill in a way of leadership, right? It's if you're being a pioneering leader, if you're being, and I say this as with the hat of an entrepreneur on as well, because doing things that deliver value to clients, to society, ultimately requires bringing people along with you, which as an entrepreneur includes the skill of selling, right? And it's one of those leadership skills to essentially enroll people, right? To whether it's enrolling people that work with you, for you, or enrolling clients if you're an entrepreneur. And it's one of those skills that, even though I've been in business since 2011, and managed to win business, I never really saw myself as a salesperson or as somebody that would sell. I actually found it really uncomfortable for a long time. And a few years ago, it just made me, I had a bit of a mindset shift around this. It stopped me being alone in my kind of sales role, sales identity. And it was that's like sales as an act of service, and you're going through the process of helping people solve that, which is the same as leadership, right? That's a leader helps people overcome the challenges to be a better version of themselves, a greater version of themselves in service of something bigger. And it's one of those things, just to finish off this point, was I had friends who were actual salespeople. They built up very successful property companies, and they were salespeople. And I always dismissed wanting to learn from them. I just thought, there's nothing for me to learn from them. And when you talked about learning from your peers, it's like, actually, they're doing a very different thing to me, but I could have totally learned sales or the act of sales and that sales skills to support my mission, my purpose, much earlier on in my journey than I am now. And it's about being open as well, right? It's about figuring out who else can I lean on, or what other guides can I bring on board on my team as we climb up the mountain, just to bring it back to the mountain analogy.
That is such a, that's a really rich example. And in my personal journey, and also in conversations with my clients, there has always been a bit of a drawback from the selling. But if you think of the root word of sales, it means to help. So and if you think that selling is serving, then selling the great idea you have, your core premise, the foundation of your authority and your identity and your purpose, that's what you can contribute. Explaining it to yourself so that you start to believe it yourself and act out of that is the first step of selling it to yourself. Then you have to sell the idea to others. And then at the end, that there is a financial transaction involved of it is mainly the ownership that the person who receives it shows.
Yes.
Because if they recognize and reward it, then we could tell there has been value.
Yes.
So entrepreneurship and sales and pioneering and leadership, if we put them in boxes, we get to roles and positions of a big corporation. And then we have maybe an image of people who do sales without a heart, without a purpose. But if you bring it to your own authority, they're just sides of the diamond, facets of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest offer you have, literally, to sell your great idea to someone who's blessed by it.
And here's the twist to all of this, which I've learned over the years. You don't even have to be a great salesperson, so long as you have the conviction around what you have to offer as being useful, because that you will exude the confidence, you'll exude the enthusiasm that is infectious, and people will just gravitate towards anyway. So there's like sales, but not in the same way. That it's so funny. I'm saying all this because I had a very awful experience with a window salesperson over the weekend last week. And they were like really a salesperson, and it felt like they were stuck in the midst of time in terms of the strategies they use, and it felt so uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't know.
Exactly the same. It was a story where I seeked advice to make the smart decision, and I got positive information what he had in store, and I had a long story about the downsides of the things that he had not in store. And I really thought that then I'm only equipped to buy what you or have in store, but I ask you advice to make a decision.
Yeah. It's I need to write about it sometime soon. Um,
But I think it's the other way around as well. Like, we as leaders try to share information easier than empowering people for making decisions. And recently, someone told me blunt in my face, you know, and being a Dutchman, you have to wake up early to be that blunt. And he said to me, if you share too much information, you're like a fire hose. Well, I know that practice, being a fire hose. And he said, have you ever wondered why you share so much information? Because maybe, he said, you're trying to compensate or prove your credibility.
hmm,
So, do you believe it yourself? Because it's about believing it yourself. It's your great idea. It's who you are, your authority, your mountain in a way. Do you believe your mountain yourself? Or are you going to use too many words around it to paint a richer picture to compensate? Because the other person only needs to be helped to make a decision.
right. And what was I'm kind of curious, what was your reaction or response to?
Well, I recognized the fire hose. I recognized information, um, that empowering to make a decision
Yeah,
is a bit secondary. But
yeah, it's
the wake up call was, again, do I believe it myself that
yeah,
this is what I can make a difference with to another person? If so, don't try to defend it up front.
yeah. And here's the I guess the nuance as well, right? Is there's a balance between uh, as a leader wanting to share your vision, share your perspectives, share the direction of travel, and bring people on board, and being in conversation with people to have them agree that they want to come on board. And so that the skill involved in that is getting super curious, asking good questions, and almost like leaving your side of the picture to one side whilst you seek to understand where they're coming from, where there is alignment, where there is uncertainty, where there is resonance, all those different things, so that once that comes out of the conversation from whoever you're working with, working or a client that you want to have, then it's like, okay, well, great. Now that I know that this is important to you and you want to achieve this and that, then this journey that I'm proposing that we go on actually supports you in achieving your goals, supports you in having the impact that you want to have, or whatever it is that's important to the person. And so, yeah, there's definitely a balancing act between being clear yourself about where you want to go, but also just checking with others. Are you happy to go here with me as well?
Yeah, and at the end, it's about the other person. It's selling is serving. It's about serving them. And if it's about empowering people to make decisions, it's about them owning the decision that serves them.
Yeah,
So that also means that the story is about them.
yeah,
And we call that then active listening and asking questions. But, it's your idea, but it's a story about them. It needs to happen in the receiver's language or words and not in your extended grid.
yeah,
Because people don't receive what's outside of grid.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that is going back to the metaphor, climbing your mountain. When I'm at the summit of a mountain, I experience a lot, but there is one thing I actually don't experience anymore, which I still experienced the last meter climbing it, and that was exhaustion.
Hmm.
I was tired, I was fed up, I'm done with the climbing and the rock slides and all the other kind of things. But the moment I have finished the last step, that's gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm learning that self-reflection intentionally now needs to reflect on the journey I've
Hmm.
taken, because that process gives me an insight of the unique authority I have as an entrepreneur, as a leader.
Yeah.
So it reveals what I truly carry,
Yeah.
what I truly can serve someone else with. And I tend to miss it when I do the climbing, and I
Yeah.
I
Well,
block it because I have made the victory.
yeah. Well, it just from sometimes, so obviously reflection is a really important leadership skill, and it's to consolidate your learning, to recognize what you want to do with your learning, how you want to improve things the next time for the next climb, for example. But when you're in motion and you've made the plan and you know what you're doing, you got to take those one step at a time. There's no point just reflecting and going, what, where am I doing? Am I doing this right? It's actually, no, you just take those steps, because the there's momentum involved in that. And in a way, on that, there's probably a little bit more to that metaphor, because on the climb, and it sounds like you've actually climbed mountains. I've tried to climb one mountain in Peru about 11 years ago, and we aborted because my friend, he was a good friend. I don't know. I called him my colleague, my friend, um,
My fellow
my
climber without
fellow,
a name.
somebody I just know, but like that's just somebody I was like a really good friend of
Your
mine.
friend. Okay.
Yeah, he hadn't been at high altitude for as long as I had, and so he wasn't as climatized, and he got uh, altitude sickness. So he
Yeah.
decided to come back down the mountain. But it happened when the storms came in, and our mountain guide said, "Look, we're going to go up here. The storms are going to come in at this time, but what we'll do is we'll put up the tent. We'll go in the tent. We'll ride out the storm, and then when the storm goes, we'll put the tent back and we'll just carry on with the climb." It was like 6,000 meters we were trying to get to, and we got to 5,000 something, and we had to go back because my friend's headache was too much.
Yeah.
But what I remembered from that was that I couldn't see anything, and also we were climbing in the dark. We started the climb super early for the ascent,
Yeah.
and you just can't see the view. You can't see anything. There's just like the storms there, and there's something about um, being on the climb where you have to also recognize that you might have complete and utter doubt around what the fuck you're doing. Mind my language, but and it's then making a decision around what's the right call at this point. So in this case, like I said, we went down, but I think there's definitely something around the metaphor about what happens when the weather comes in, and and recognizing that even if you can't see something. So, for example, let's say my friend didn't have altitude sickness, we would still have to just take those steps one step at a time without knowing what's around us. And there's a faith and resilience involved in that until you get to the top, and then you can look around and go, okay, I've all the endorphins and dopamine's kicking in now, and I don't feel tired.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know if that
because
that
you have never been there, for you it was the journey of a pioneer.
mm,
So you didn't see where the path was going, or the end, the destination. So you only could see where you would set your foot the next step. And that is also that's also something about knowing what it is about and what you're doing,
mm,
because else you'll give up and in your scenario, it was your friend, and I had once altitude disease or sickness, and that's something you wish not your worst enemy. And but that still, where am I going? How do I navigate the darkness, the storm, the wind? And in the podcast, I've used many times from a sailing boat perspective. Then it becomes to your boat, your skills, your goal, your journey, your calling, how you never use the wind to still get where you want to go. And of course, there are many other examples out there, but you need to know what it is about as a leader, because else you are a follower of the circumstances. And of course, there is a duality in it. The guide is in a way the leader, but you were pioneering your own.
Yeah. It's like multiple roles. Yeah,
great example. So to wrap up, our second podcast, our 7 to 10, with all the technical glitches we had over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm glad the tech worked this time.
We have gone so rapidly through many key takeaways. What are the 3 key takeaways that you mentioned, heard?
Yeah. I really like the point that you made about goals. Don't change your goals, but change the way you get there. You use your son as an example. I think that's really important to have the conviction of recognizing what your goals are and making your way there and navigating through the terrain, whatever that might be. The other piece that struck me was just about the need to have other people to go along the journey with you, whether they're guides, whether they are people who've been there and done that before, whether they're peers, whether they are people that you are leading with you. Like there's like all the different roles, and that really leads me to the third piece as well. It's the role we take on that journey, and what I always want to talk about, like, that what hat are you wearing? What are you, the pioneer right now? You wearing the pioneer hat, and whichever hat you're wearing, making sure that you're aligning around what other people are wanting as well. So asking questions.
Yeah. And then I want to add to that, the first one that you mentioned is that actually in preparation with intention is not optional.
Yeah.
It is the distinction between being a follower of circumstances or a leader through circumstances. And if that means you only know what is the next step to take, or you see the path, that's all part of being, or the preparation and the intention.
Yeah, beautiful.
So to just wrap it up for our listeners, there must be something that resonated with you, because that made you listen to the end. I really want to encourage you to take that resonance as a trigger to connect, and not be that leader, that pioneer that feels a bit isolated. So just use the opportunity. You can use the link businessrevivalist.com/connect, or use the direct messaging through the streaming channel you've watched our podcast. But please, 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 for your sake, connect, take that trigger serious, and make a next step. Pedram, thank you for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
It was a joy, and we will do it again.
Absolutely.